World leaders react to the U.S. midterm election results. Sustainable cities and the role of local and subnational governments in Africa. And Kenya sees a boom in innovation spaces. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. We'll have those stories in a moment. But first, 47 people are dead, including 2 minors in the southern African nation of Zimbabwe, following a horrific crash involving 2 buses near the Rusape toll gate, according to police spokesman, Assistant Commissioner Paul Nyati, who confirmed that the fatalities. Much of the video shot at the scene of the accident is too graphic for us to air, but showed bodies scattered across the road amid the debris of the crash. An investigation of the accident is underway. According to police and media reports, the 2 buses collided on a road between the capital Harare and the southeastern town of Rusape. The force of the high-speed sideswipe completely ripped open the side of one bus and destroyed the front of the other bus, trapping passengers inside mangled, twisted metal. Sadly, traffic accidents are common in many parts of Zimbabwe, especially where roads are dotted with potholes due to years of neglect. However, in this case, the highway where the collision happened had been recently resurfaced. Vote counting was underway in Madagascar on Thursday after a presidential election, with former leader Andry Rajoelina commanding a slim lead in early results from a small number of polling stations. Preliminary results released by the Independent National Electoral Commission from about 100 polling stations out of more than 24,000 showed Rajoelina ahead of his 2 main rivals with 44.4% of the vote. The poll pits Rajoelina against incumbent President Henry Rajoelina, who was seeking a second term in office, and another former leader, Marc Ravalomanana. The contest has drawn a total of 36 candidates. Rajoelina says his camp had identified several anomalies, including the use of an invalid voter register, delays in opening of the polls in some places, intimidation and ballot stuffing. Voters are eager to get a winner who will tackle the impoverished Indian Ocean Islands' many problems, including unemployment and corruption. While leaders are reacting to the U.S. midterm election results as America's partners and rivals try to decipher what the opposition Democratic Party's new majority in the House of Representatives could mean for the future of President Donald Trump's foreign policy agenda for the remainder of his term. Henry Ridgwell reports from London.
Democrats declare their victory in the House of Representatives marks a new day in America. But a new dawn too for American foreign policy. Not so, says analyst Peter Trubowitz.
The main play that Donald Trump now has is on the foreign policy side, where he has much more discretionary authority and room to maneuver than he does on the domestic side. So I would actually look for Trump to double down on trade with China, on Iran, and on the border with Mexico.
Trubowitz says Democrats may offer support for Trump's stance on China. Washington has imposed tariffs on $250 billion of imports, accusing Beijing of unfair trade practices. Chinese officials refuse to comment on the election results. Europe also fears US tariffs on its key exports, like cars. Germany's foreign minister said Wednesday the election results are unlikely to ease tensions.
On this side of the Atlantic, we have to find an answer to the U.S. motto of America First, which to me can only be Europe United.
In Moscow, a spokesperson for Russian President Vladimir Putin said relations with the U.S. would not change, as it would be hard to make them any worse. Meanwhile, U.S. policy in the Middle East is unlikely to change radically, say analysts.
When it comes to the selling of weapons to Saudi Arabia and the Middle East, we may hear some voices, and there may be a call to end the war in Yemen.
Israel urged President Trump to push forward with his peace plan, which has seen the U.S. move its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Palestinian officials urged a change of course.
The Democrats in the United States are getting closer to a position that may lead eventually to a peace process.
There was global praise for the record number of women elected to Congress, including Democrat Rashida Tlaib, born to Palestinian immigrants. Tlaib's uncle spoke from his home in the West Bank.
All the region is proud of Rashida for her victory as the first Arab Palestinian Muslim to reach this position.
World leaders will now be wondering what comes next, says Trubowitz.
Whether or not to wait Donald Trump out. In other words, to play for time over the next 2 years. This will be the calculation being made in Tehran, in Beijing, and perhaps in some European capitals as well.
That calculation would appear tough to solve, with US politics seen as increasingly volatile. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
Well, results were disappointing for two Democratic candidates who battled to become the first African-American state governors of Florida and Georgia after closely contested campaigns where race and identity politics were highly divisive issues. VOA's Brian Patton reports on this two close races in traditionally conservative states.
Florida Democratic nominee for Governor Andrew Gillum conceded the race after narrowly losing to his Republican rival Ron DeSantis after more than 8 million votes were cast. Despite the loss, Gillum vowed to remain politically active.
I want you to know that in spite of our congratulating him on his victory this evening, nothing that we believe in is compromised.
DeSantis is closely aligned with President Trump, who came twice to Florida to campaign for him.
But the great thing about our country is that every 2 years, the people have that one day in November where the elites don't call the shots.
In Georgia, the race for governor is too close to call at this point, but the Republican candidate, Brian Kemp, is narrowly ahead.
And folks, make no mistake, the math is on our side to win this election.
However, his rival, Democrat Stacey Abrams, has not conceded. Abrams says the race could come down to a runoff election if neither candidate wins 50% of the vote.
But I'm here tonight to tell you votes remain to be counted.
In both Georgia and Florida, the Democratic candidates focused on increasing voter turnout among minorities and received high-profile help from talk show host Oprah Winfrey and former President Barack Obama. Both Abrams and Gillum were targeted by racist automated calls to voters from a white supremacist group that both parties denounced. In Georgia, the Republican nominee Brian Kemp has been accused of trying to suppress the vote in his current role as Georgia's Secretary of State, a position that oversees elections. A federal judge put on hold a law enforced by Kemp's office, which lawsuits say sought to disqualify minority voters. Kemp also opened an investigation into the Democratic Party days before the election for possibly tampering with the state voter registration system without providing any evidence. In Florida, DeSantis was criticized for using coded racist language when he said in an interview Gillum would monkey the state up. The Republican nominee also struggled to explain his alleged association with white supremacist groups. Florida is a critical swing state that President Trump narrowly won in 2016. DeSantis' victory in this highly polarized race for governor could bolster the president's re-election chances in 2020. Brian Patton, VOA News, Washington.
Well, authorities in Southern California say 12 people are dead after gunmen barged into a neighborhood bar and opened fire early on Thursday morning in yet another mass shooting in the United States. Police have identified the shooter as a 28-year-old former Marine, and they say it appears that he killed himself after the massacre. The latest shooting attack occurred in the city of Thousand Oaks, located more than 60 kilometers west of Los Angeles. Authorities say they received multiple calls of gunfire at the Borderline Bar and Grill, a country music dance club that was hosting a special event for area college students.
I was on the dance floor dancing at the time, and then all my friends were at the table right by the door, and then I heard the gunshot, I turned around and I saw him shoot a couple more times, and within a split second, everyone yelled, "Get down."
A member of the Ventura County Sheriff's Department was shot as he arrived at the scene and rushed inside the bar to confront the shooter. Ventura County Sheriff Jeff Dean says after more law enforcement officers arrived, they entered the bar and found 11 patrons had been killed.
You know, I've been a cop for 41 years, and I never thought I would see the things around the country that would happen, but I've learned it doesn't matter what community you're in, it doesn't matter how safe your community is, it can happen anywhere.
The wounded officer, Sergeant Ron Healers, a 29-year veteran of the department, later died at a local hospital. Sheriff Dean says the gunman was also found shot to death. He told reporters investigators have no idea if the shooting is terror-related. Sheriff Dean said there were also multiple other victims with various injuries. Many of the victims fled the scene after the shooting began and took themselves to local hospitals. The religious community in Pittsburgh is coming together against the hate after a gunman killed 11 people at the Tree of Life synagogue in the city's mostly Jewish Squirrel Hill neighborhood. Now, according to witnesses, the attacker said he wanted to kill Jews. Instead, people of different faiths say the community is more united than ever. Bizan Hamdad has more from Pittsburgh.
A Saturday morning in Pittsburgh, unlike any other.
We were heartbroken when we heard what had happened, and we didn't believe it at first. We were calling people to try to figure out what to do, you know, like what's going on, is it real?
Wasim Mohammed was in shock.
And then the other one's at 6:30 at Temple Sinai.
He's the executive director of the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh, and on that morning, his phone was abuzz.
I get a phone full of calls, texts, and messages asking us what can we do from the Muslim community, where should we go, and we decided to raise some money in response to this tragedy.
Within hours, an online fundraising campaign to help victims' families with funeral costs went viral. And while the original goal was to raise $25,000, within a few days the campaign raised over $235,000.
We didn't even think that there's going to be that much of money that we will be able to raise.
Locals say that Pittsburgh is one community and that its members look out for each other.
Our relationship with all the other groups of faith, Catholic brothers and sisters, Jewish brothers and sisters, or any denomination of Christianity, it's been like this for some time.
These are real relationships that were there, so they existed before this tragedy. That's how we were to react so quickly.
Pittsburgh's chief of police says the Pittsburgh community has always been united.
Pittsburgh, we celebrate together for, you know, whether it's sports teams or how the city's doing. We grieve together when there's tragedy, and we help one another.
The Islamic Center's imam agrees.
If anything happens to us, they also come and they show their support. So it's a beautiful connection, and I hope that we can work all of these faiths that are here. I hope they can work together in order to, you know, strengthen their relationship with one another.
Restaurant owner Sean Casey says the horrific tragedy has brought an already united city even closer.
And you can see in the last few days how the community is coming together so well. The Catholics are doing candlelight vigilance and services at the Tree of Life. The citizenry is coming together, all walks of life. The Islamic community is coming together to support and offer guidance and protection as some of the people are nervous about going shopping.
Chief Schubert says Pittsburgh has always been a close-knit city and that nothing can divide the community.
Pittsburgh's stronger than hate, and we truly are. That's something that's beautiful that's come out of this whole tragedy. You know, we're not going to let somebody destroy who we are and what we believe in.
Bejan Hamdard, VOA News, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Still ahead on Africa 54, a closer look at the First Tech Hub in Mombasa. But first, a look at Thursday's headlines.
In Zimbabwe, a head-on collision between two buses has killed 47 people in a country where traffic accidents are common due to poor roads and bad driving. In Madagascar, former presidents André Rajoelina and Marc Ravalomanana are the top contenders in the first round of presidential elections, according to partial vote counts. Somalis praised the election of Somali refugee Ilhan Omar to the U.S. Congress. Britain's Prince Charles observed the Nigerian Navy training in Lagos on Wednesday during his 3-day visit that will conclude his tour of West Africa. Finally, in South Africa, an award-winning app is empowering small-scale South African farmers by connecting them with supermarkets.
In the South Sudanese town of Yei, preparations are underway to guard against the spread of Ebola from neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo. Yei is 300 kilometers from Congo, which is battling an outbreak of the viral hemorrhagic fever. According to the United Nations, a key concern is the porous border between the two countries, with only 3 of the 15 main routes currently being monitored for the virus. At the local hospital, medical teams assess facilities like the setting up of Ebola isolation tents. They say there is an urgent need for a new ambulance as the hospital's only vehicle has broken down. House-to-house efforts are also underway to educate people about prevention, including in areas where there has been fighting between government forces and rebel factions. Well, Africa is rapidly urbanizing. Africa's urbanization is manifest in the growth of its megacities as well as that of its smaller towns. AfriCities is the United Cities and Local Governments of Africa's flagship Pan-African event that is held every 3 years in one of the 5 regions of Africa. The summits seek to define appropriate shared strategies in order to improve the living conditions of people at the local level, as well as contribute to the integration, peace, and unity of Africa, starting from the grassroots. At this time, the summit will take place in Marrakesh, Morocco. To tell us more about AfriCities, Jean-Pierre Elong-Bassi, Secretary General of the United Cities and Local Governments, joins me live via Skype from Johannesburg. Mr. Elong-Bassi, welcome to Africa 54.
Well done for my name. Yeah. Very good.
I do my best. I try. Now, tell us, first, these summits have taken place now for a few years. What are some of the things that you think you have achieved through these particular conversations?
I think the first thing we achieved is that now the local governments, local and regional government, have a voice. Before, these people were considered as minor actors. Now, through the AfriCities Summit, they are considered as key stakeholders for the changing or the transformation of the lives of African people. Mm-hmm. And this voice is more and more loud and more considered.
Yes. Now, we know that the urbanization has become a menace in some parts of Africa. You feel like the governments are not keeping up with the pace of the migration of people from the rural areas to the cities. What is the best solution? Is it to continue expanding the cities and perhaps the infrastructure, or perhaps to build new towns, new cities, and kind of distribute the populations around the country?
You know, urbanization is happening in a pace that was not encountered in history in Africa. It took Paris 1 century to go from 500,000 people to 1 million people. It took Lagos 25 years to go from 500 to 1 million people. So also Lagos spend each year, they have 500,000 people more in the city. So we don't have in history the kind of growth of urban areas that we witness in Africa. So we need to see. Mm-hmm. And AfriCities through thinking.
Yeah, we're having a little bit audio problem there, but if you can hear me, what is going to be your focus in Marrakesh, and especially when you look at the challenges that African cities and towns face? What is it that this time around you'll be focusing on in Marrakesh when you meet?
The theme that we choose is the transition to sustainable cities and territories. Same path that the developed and emerging countries.
I think we're having serious issues here. I can't hear you, Mr. Elong Mbassi.
Can't hear me.
Yeah. We're kind of I'm losing you a bit there. So if you can hear me, what's your last thought there before I say goodbye to you? Okay. Looks like we've lost him, and that was Jean-Pierre Elong Mbassi, he's the Secretary General of the United Cities and Local Governments, Africa. And now, over the last 5 years, Kenya's innovation spaces have grown from just a handful to hundreds. Swahili Port Hub is the first tech hub in Mombasa, and it's designed to be a multifunctional space where developers and startups can work and grow. Here's Africa 54's Paul Dion.
Located in the coastal city of Mombasa, Swahili Port Hub has been getting a lot of attention lately in the tech world, and for a good reason. It's a place for innovation where enthusiasts and entrepreneurs come to solve everyday technological problems. Muhammad Nuru, Swahili Port founder, says brilliant minds have never been in short supply in Kenya, but the channel to develop their ideas and help them grow into successful businesses has been a long time coming.
Swahili Port Hub is an innovation for technology and arts. We started it as a way of reducing the unemployment by creating opportunities to young people who have creative minds, both in technology and arts. But the biggest problem that young people face is they do not have a place, or they are not enabled for them to actualize some of the dreams and creativity that they have.
Nuru wants to build an ecosystem that focuses on inspiring and developing young talent in technology.
The incubation hubs are giving opportunities to young Africans with creative ideas. So I thought everything should not happen in Nairobi. I think we should have also opportunities, because it's 500 kilometers to Nairobi. So it's bringing opportunities closer to the people.
Similar areas in the capital, Nairobi, have helped many young people launch into the tech business.
We started the techie, we did not see it impacting a lot. So that's when we came up with the issue of let us expand and add the arts. And immediately we fused arts and technology. The number rose from around 700 to almost 800 young people who are accessing the place.
Like any startup company, Swahili Port Hub Mombasa is not without its challenges. It relies heavily on volunteers.
The biggest challenge is resources. And when young people hear stories that when you go to Swahili Port, your lives can be changed, then more and more come. And when they come, young people are they expect results and almost immediately. So when they come, you will train them here for a while. But after that, you need to place them somewhere.
Analysts say IPO potential startups are growing in Africa, and the market size of East Africa's biggest economy makes Kenya, with nearly 50 million people, an attractive location. Several small companies have already grown out of Swahili Port Hub. Many are dedicated to applying technology to solution-specific problems. Paul Diho, VOA News, Washington.
Well, thanks a lot, Paul, for that report. We'll be right back.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile, in more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. A Saudi government body has finished the construction of what is described as the country's first 3D printed house located close to Riyadh. It is part of a plan to create an attractive investment environment for construction technology in the kingdom. The initiative comes on the heels of the country's major 2030 development plan, which plans to build 1 million houses in 5 years with an investment of over $100 billion to address a looming housing crisis in Saudi Arabia. Developers have used thermal insulation technology for the unit to withstand high temperatures and harsh weather conditions in Saudi Arabia. The building process of the 75 square meters unit took 25 hours to complete. Well, next up, it looks like a regular school backpack, but within seconds it transforms into a bulletproof vest. Israeli company Masada Armor says backpack vest works by flipping an armored plate from a concealed compartment in the bag. It says it's a quick and simple solution that can be easily used by children. The company says the standard protection backpack can stop handgun bullets, while an upgraded version is strong enough to block rifle fire. Co-owner Yahya Rosenberg says the product was designed to give school children a defense against mass shooting attacks. The backpack is suitable for children above 12 years. There are plans to produce models that will fit even younger children. And that's what's trending today. Well, that's our show for today. Now, be sure to watch Africa 54, our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa. That's between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A lot of American English idioms refer to parts of the body.
Get off on the wrong foot.
Are Anna and Jonathan having trouble learning a dance? How did it go meeting your girlfriend's family?
Well, it was interesting. First, I was really late.
Oh, Jonathan.
Yeah, and then at dinner I spilled my water all over